There's a tradition that exists in almost every human culture, across every continent, stretching back thousands of years. A specific time when the living acknowledge the dead, when the boundary between worlds grows thin, when we light fires and tell stories and remember those who came before. And what we call Halloween in the modern world is just one expression of something far older, far stranger than costume parties and candy. On October 31st, the ancient Celts believed the veil between our world and the spirit world dissolved completely, allowing the dead to walk among the living for a single night. They lit bonfires to guide lost souls and wore masks to confuse malevolent spirits who might be searching for bodies to possess. Right now, as you listen to this, we're approaching or just past that threshold moment, when, for thousands of years, humans have felt something shift, something open, something that makes us want to gather together and light fires against the darkness. And that's only the beginning of what makes Halloween one of humanity's most mysterious and enduring traditions. If you're new here, welcome. I'm grateful you've chosen to spend this time exploring something profound. This is a space dedicated to understanding the world's most fascinating subjects in a calm, meditative way, where knowledge becomes a companion to rest, where curiosity and peace coexist. If this resonates with you, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe. It helps these journeys continue, and it means we can explore more of these quiet mysteries together. Tonight, let's talk about Halloween. Not the commercialized version with plastic decorations and candy corn, but the deeper tradition, the ancient festival of Samhain, the Day of the Dead, the worldwide human impulse to honor darkness and death, and the turning of seasons. The night when we collectively acknowledge that some boundaries are more permeable than they seem. The first thing to understand is that Halloween originates from Samhain, a Gaelic festival marking the end of harvest and the beginning of winter, celebrated from sunset on October 31st to sunset on November 1st. For the ancient Celts, this was one of the 4 major seasonal turning points, and it was the most significant because it marked the transition from the light half of the year to the dark half. The harvest was complete, the livestock brought down from summer pastures, the stores laid up for winter. Everything that could be done to prepare for the cold months was finished. And now came the waiting, the long darkness, the season when death was most present. And Samhain was, fundamentally, a festival about death. The Celts believed that on this night, the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead became permeable. The dead could return to visit their living relatives. Spirits could cross over. The Aishi, the fairy folk, supernatural beings who dwelt in the hills and burial mounds, became active and potentially dangerous. This wasn't metaphor. This was literal belief, taken seriously, prepared for with specific rituals and precautions. People would light bonfires on hilltops, massive fires visible for miles, partly to honor the sun that was withdrawing its light, but also to protect against malevolent spirits. They would extinguish their home hearths and relight them from the sacred bonfire, symbolically renewing the fire that would sustain them through winter. They would wear costumes, animal skins and heads, masks and disguises, to confuse any harmful spirits who might be wandering. If a malevolent entity couldn't recognize you as human, it couldn't target you. The costume was protection, camouflage, a way of moving through a dangerous night unseen. And they would leave food outside their homes, offerings for the dead who might be passing by. The belief was that deceased ancestors would return to visit on Samhain, and you wanted to honor them, to show respect, to maintain the relationship between the living and the dead. But not all spirits were benevolent. Some were lost, confused, potentially angry. The offerings might appease them, might encourage them to move on, rather than linger or cause harm. This practice of leaving food for spirits evolved, over many centuries and through many cultural changes, into the tradition of trick-or-treating. The connection isn't obvious at first, but it's there. In medieval Britain and Ireland, there was a practice called souling, where poor people would go door to door on All Souls' Day, November 2nd, offering prayers for the dead in exchange for soul cakes, small round cakes representing a soul freed from purgatory. Later came guising in Scotland and Ireland, where children would dress in costumes and go door to door performing songs, poems, or tricks in exchange for food or coins. This was still tied to the idea of spirits abroad on Halloween night. But now living children were taking the place of the dead, performing for offerings just as spirits might have been appeased with offerings. When these traditions came to America with Irish and Scottish immigrants, they merged with other customs and eventually became trick-or-treating as we know it. Children in costumes going door to door, receiving candy instead of soul cakes, the commercial exchange replacing the spiritual one, but the underlying pattern remaining. Give us something, or we'll play a trick. It's still negotiation with potentially mischievous beings, still offering to prevent harm, even though everyone involved now understands it as play rather than protection. But let's go deeper into why this particular night. Why late October? Why the association with death and spirits and darkness? The timing is astronomical and agricultural. Late October is when day and night are roughly equal in length in the northern hemisphere, when the balance tips decisively toward darkness, when winter's approach becomes undeniable. The trees are losing their leaves. The fields are harvested, lying bare. The temperature drops. Everything is dying back, entering dormancy or dying outright. For agricultural societies living close to the land, this dying was visceral, immediate. The abundance of summer was gone. The lean months were beginning. Livestock that couldn't be fed through winter were slaughtered, their meat preserved. The death of animals, the death of plants, the symbolic death of the sun as its power waned. All of this made late autumn a time saturated with mortality, with endings, with the need to acknowledge and honor the cycles of life and death. And there's something in human psychology that responds to this, something that makes us want to mark transitions, to acknowledge thresholds, to perform rituals at the boundaries between states. Samhain was the boundary between summer and winter, between light and dark, between the time of growth and the time of death. And boundaries, in folklore and magic across cultures, are liminal spaces. Thresholds where normal rules don't apply, where transformations happen, where beings from other realms can cross over. This is why crossroads appear so frequently in folklore as places of power and danger. The boundary between two paths is a threshold. Doorways, gates, bridges, all are liminal spaces in mythology. Places where you're neither here nor there, where you're vulnerable to forces that don't operate in settled, defined spaces. And the night of Samhain is a temporal threshold, the year's great doorway between light and dark. And on that night, the dead can pass through because thresholds permit passage in both directions. Which brings us to the fascinating way Christianity absorbed and transformed these pagan festivals. The early church was pragmatic about conversion. Rather than trying to eliminate festivals that were deeply embedded in people's lives and psychologies, they Christianized them, giving them new meanings that aligned with Christian theology while preserving the structure and timing that people were already observing. Samhain became All Saints' Day on November 1st, honoring Christian saints and martyrs, and All Souls' Day on November 2nd, praying for the faithful dead in purgatory. The night before All Saints' Day, All Hallows' Eve, became Halloween. The themes remained remarkably consistent, still honoring the dead, still acknowledging the spiritual realm, still marking the transition into winter's darkness, but now filtered through Christian cosmology, with saints instead of ancestors, with prayers instead of offerings, with church bells instead of hilltop bonfires. The underlying human impulse, to pause at this moment, to acknowledge death, to honor those who've gone before, remained unchanged, just dressed in new theological language. And this pattern repeated across the world. In Mexico, Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, coincides with All Saints and All Souls Days, celebrated on November 1st and 2nd. But it draws on pre-Columbian traditions from Aztec and other indigenous cultures, who had their own festivals honoring the dead, their own beliefs about when the deceased could return to visit the living. When Spanish Catholicism arrived, it merged with these existing practices, creating a tradition that's distinctly Mexican, but also recognizably part of this worldwide pattern of autumn festivals acknowledging death. On Dia de los Muertos, families build altars called ofrendas in their homes and at grave sites, decorated with photographs of deceased loved ones, marigold flowers whose scent is believed to guide spirits home, sugar skulls representing death with beauty and color, favorite foods and drinks of the deceased. The atmosphere is celebratory, not somber. Death is acknowledged but not feared. The dead are welcomed back for their annual visit, treated as honored guests, remembered with joy rather than grief. Music, dancing, staying up all night in cemeteries to be with the departed. It's a festival, but a festival that takes death seriously as a real presence, as part of life rather than its opposite. What's remarkable is how similar themes appear in cultures that had no contact with each other. In China, the Hungry Ghost Festival occurs in late summer, but it serves the same function, acknowledging wandering spirits, making offerings, protecting against potentially harmful entities while honoring benevolent ancestors. In Japan, the Obon Festival honors the spirits of ancestors, with lanterns lit to guide them home and back. In Cambodia, Chum Ben is a 15-day festival focused on honoring deceased relatives. Across the world, human cultures have independently developed traditions that acknowledge the dead, that mark specific times as particularly significant for the relationship between living and dead, that involve offerings, lights, remembrance. This suggests something deep in human psychology, some shared response to mortality that manifests across cultures in remarkably similar ways. We need to honor our dead. We need times and rituals for remembering. We need the sense that death is not absolute severance but a change in relationship, that the deceased remains somehow present, that we can still tend to them through memory and ritual even though they're gone. And Halloween, in all its manifestations across cultures and time, serves this need. It gives us permission to think about death, to play with the imagery of mortality in a context that's bounded, safe, temporary. For one night, we can contemplate the things we usually avoid, our own mortality, the deaths of loved ones, the darkness that surrounds us, the unknown that waits beyond life. We can dress as skeletons and ghosts, can decorate with tombstones and skulls, can tell scary stories and watch horror movies, can engage with death symbolically in ways that would be too frightening or disturbing any other time of year. There's something psychologically healthy about this, about having a designated time to acknowledge what we spend the rest of the year denying or avoiding. Death is real. It will come for all of us, for everyone we love, eventually. We know this intellectually, but live most of our lives as if it's not true, as if we have infinite time, as if the people around us will always be there. Halloween is the night we remember, collectively, that this isn't so. And, paradoxically, that remembering can be liberating, even joyful. When we face death directly, even symbolically, it loses some of its power to terrorize us through avoidance. Consider the role of fear in Halloween, which is central but complicated. We seek out things that scare us: haunted houses, horror movies, scary costumes, ghost stories. Why? Why deliberately induce fear, an emotion that's normally unpleasant and that we avoid in daily life? The answer seems to be that controlled fear, fear experienced in a safe context, is actually thrilling, exciting, even pleasurable. It gives us the physiological arousal, increased heart rate, adrenaline, heightened awareness, without real danger. It's play fighting with the most serious topics, practicing confrontation with threats that aren't actually present, and Halloween provides the perfect container for this. The entire cultural context says this is play, this is not real, you're safe. That assurance allows us to engage with frightening imagery and ideas that would be traumatic in other contexts. A child can dress as a skeleton, can literally wear the symbol of death on their body, because everyone knows it's pretend, it's play, it's Halloween. And in that play, something important happens. The child learns that scary things can be controlled, can be made less frightening through familiarity and imagination, can even become fun. Adults do the same thing in different ways. Horror movies, haunted houses, scary stories around campfires. All are ways of engaging with fear in controlled doses, building our psychological resilience, exploring themes of danger and death and the supernatural in contexts where we can regulate our exposure and walk away when it becomes too much. Halloween is the cultural festival that celebrates this practice, that says it's not only acceptable but good to sometimes seek out fear, to dance at the edge of comfort, to look into the darkness and then return to the light. And woven through all of this is the supernatural, the sense that the world contains more than we can see or measure, that there are presences, entities, forces beyond our understanding. Halloween is when we collectively indulge our fascination with the paranormal. Ghosts, witches, vampires, monsters of all kinds populate the imagery. These aren't just random scary things. They're specific, archetypal figures that recur across cultures and throughout history, suggesting they represent something deep in the human psyche, some fear or fascination that's universal. Ghosts, for instance, the spirits of the dead who linger in the world of the living, appear in virtually every culture's folklore. The details vary, but the basic concept is consistent. Death doesn't always sever the connection between the deceased and the places or people they knew in life. Sometimes they return. Sometimes they remain. Sometimes they're glimpsed at boundaries, dusk, midnight, crossroads, doorways. The ghost is the manifestation of our belief that death isn't quite final, that some essence persists, that the boundary between here and whatever comes after is permeable. And as you settle deeper into stillness, as your breathing slows and the day's concerns recede, think about what Halloween reveals about us as a species, as beings who know we'll die, but who live as if we won't, who fear the dark but also seek it out, who honor the dead while also protecting ourselves from them, who created these elaborate traditions to hold space for all the contradictions of human mortality. We're the only species that knows death is coming, that can contemplate our own non-existence. And Halloween is one of our most elegant cultural responses to that knowledge, neither denying death nor being crushed by it, but facing it playfully, communally, annually, keeping death present enough to be real, but contained enough to be bearable. The jack-o'-lantern, that carved pumpkin glowing on porches across America every Halloween, has its origin in a much darker Irish legend about a man named Stingy Jack, who was so cunning he managed to trap the devil himself, not once, but twice. The story goes that Jack convinced the devil to climb a tree, then carved crosses into the bark so the devil couldn't come down, until he promised never to claim Jack's soul. When Jack eventually died, he was too sinful for heaven, but the devil, true to his word, wouldn't take him either. So Jack was condemned to wander the earth for eternity, and the devil threw him a burning coal from hell to light his way. Jack carved out a turnip, placed the coal inside, and has been wandering ever since, a lost soul carrying his lantern through the darkness. The Irish called him Jack of the Lantern, eventually shortened to Jack-o'-lantern, and people carved turnips and potatoes and beets to make their own lanterns, grotesque faces meant to represent Jack or other wandering spirits, placing them in windows and on doorsteps to ward off evil entities. When Irish immigrants came to America, they discovered pumpkins, larger, easier to carve, native to North America, and the tradition transformed. The pumpkin became the perfect canvas for these protective faces, these grotesque guardians that would frighten away anything malevolent that might approach on Samhain night when the boundaries were thin. What's fascinating is how a practical tool, a lantern made from available materials, became invested with such symbolic and protective power. The light inside the carved vegetable represented life, warmth, the human presence pushing back against the darkness. And the face carved into it represented something else, something liminal. Not quite human, but human-shaped. Dead but illuminated. Grotesque enough to disturb anything looking at it. It was a boundary marker, a sign that said, "This home is protected. This threshold is guarded. Pass on to somewhere else." And this connects to the broader tradition of apotropaic magic. Magic intended to turn away harm, to protect against evil. Cultures worldwide have developed symbols and practices meant to ward off misfortune, evil spirits, curses, the evil eye, horseshoes over doors, salt across thresholds, garlic hung in windows. The specifics vary by culture, but the underlying principle is consistent. Certain objects or symbols or actions can create protection, can establish boundaries that harmful forces cannot or will not cross. Halloween is rich with these protective traditions. The costume that disguises you, the jack-o'-lantern that guards your door, the iron implements left outside that fairies cannot touch, the bread left for wandering spirits to occupy them so they don't enter your home, the bells rung to drive away evil. Each tradition is a small piece of practical magic, a way of asserting control in a situation where you're fundamentally vulnerable. The night when all the dangerous things are abroad, when normal protections don't work, when you must rely on knowledge passed down through generations about how to stay safe. Consider the witch, which has become one of Halloween's central figures, and how complicated the history is behind that now familiar image. The witch as we recognize her, old woman, pointed hat, broomstick, cauldron, black cat companion, is a specific construction, built from centuries of folklore, persecution, and cultural evolution. But witches in various forms appear across nearly all human cultures. Practitioners of magic operating outside official religious structures, often women, often marginalized, often feared. In medieval and early modern Europe, witchcraft became associated with diabolism. The belief that witches had made pacts with the devil, had traded their souls for supernatural powers, and used those powers to harm their neighbors. This belief led to the witch trials, particularly intense in Europe and colonial America between the 15th and 18th centuries, where thousands of people, mostly women, were accused, tried, tortured, and executed for witchcraft. The vast majority were innocent of anything supernatural, victims of misogyny, religious hysteria, social tensions, and the human tendency to need scapegoats for misfortune.
But beneath the persecution and the false accusations, there were actual practices that got labeled as witchcraft. Folk magic, herbalism, midwifery, healing traditions passed down through generations, usually by women, usually orally. These practitioners weren't consorting with demons. They were working with plants, with natural processes, with practical knowledge about health and agriculture and weather patterns. But in a Christian context that increasingly saw any power not channeled through the church as demonic, these folk practices became suspect, dangerous, evidence of supernatural evil. Halloween's witch is a strange amalgamation of all of this. The folk healer, the accused victim, the fictional diabolist, the independent woman operating outside patriarchal control, the crone figure from fairy tales. She's frightening but also appealing, representing power and freedom and knowledge that exists outside mainstream authority. And increasingly, the witch has been reclaimed as a positive symbol by feminist movements, by neo-pagan religions like Wicca, by people who see in the witch an archetype of resistance, of marginalized knowledge, of feminine power that patriarchal culture has always feared. When children dress as witches for Halloween, they're invoking this entire complex history, probably without knowing it. The costume connects them to centuries of women accused and killed, to folk traditions of healing and magic, to fears about female power and independence, to the entire complicated relationship between knowledge, power, gender, and religion. The witch costume is never just a costume. It's a portal into cultural memory, into histories that still shape us. Which brings us to other Halloween figures: the vampire, the werewolf, the zombie, the various monsters that populate our folklore and our Halloween celebrations. Each of these represents something, embodies some fear or fascination that's deep enough to persist across centuries and continents. The vampire is the predator who looks human, who lives among us undetected, who violates the most fundamental boundary, taking not just our lives but our blood, the essence of life itself, and using it to perpetuate their own undead existence. The vampire is seductive, attractive, sophisticated, but ultimately parasitic, draining rather than giving, dead but animated, human-shaped but monstrous. The werewolf represents the beast within, the loss of human rationality and control, the transformation that reveals we're not as civilized, as separate from nature, as we'd like to believe. By day, the werewolf is human, indistinguishable from anyone else. But when the full moon rises, the animal nature emerges, violent and uncontrollable. It's a metaphor for repression, for the shadow self, for all the impulses we suppress to function in society that sometimes break through despite our best efforts. The zombie, particularly in modern incarnations, represents different fears: the loss of individuality, the reduction of humans to mindless consumers, the breakdown of social order, the horror of being surrounded by what look like people, but aren't really people anymore. And in its original Haitian voodoo context, the zombie was something else. A person enslaved even in death, denied rest and agency, forced to labor for the one who'd zombified them. It's a nightmare specifically rooted in the trauma of slavery, in the fear that even death wouldn't bring freedom from exploitation. Each monster is a mirror reflecting some aspect of human nature or human fear back at us in distorted, exaggerated form. And Halloween is when we bring all these mirrors out. When we dress as the things we fear. When we tell stories about monsters and ghosts and things that go bump in the night. We're doing psychological work through play, confronting fears in symbolic forms, building our tolerance for the frightening and the unknown. And here's something worth considering as you lie here in darkness. Halloween's power comes partly from its relationship with night itself, with darkness, with the time when humans are most vulnerable because our primary sense, vision, doesn't work well. Our ancestors, living without electric lights, without the ability to banish darkness at will, had a very different relationship with night than we do. Darkness was genuinely dangerous. Predators moved in it. You could lose your way. Accidents happened. And beyond the practical dangers, darkness was where the imagination populated the unknown with threats. Spirits, demons, wild beasts, hostile strangers. We've largely conquered physical darkness through technology. We can illuminate any space, can turn night into day with a flip of a switch. But we haven't conquered the psychological darkness, the fear that lives in our minds, the sense that darkness conceals threats we can't see. Halloween taps into that primal fear, that ancient response to darkness and the unknown. We turn off the lights. We tell ghost stories. We create haunted houses where we can't see what's coming. We temporarily return to our ancestors' world where darkness meant danger, where night required different rules and different protections. And there's something valuable in that, in not completely losing touch with the night experience that shaped so much of human culture and psychology. We're animals that evolved to be active during the day, that have relatively poor night vision, that needed fire and shelter to survive the night safely. Darkness has shaped us, and Halloween is one way we remember that shaping. One night a year when we acknowledge that darkness still has power over us, still makes us feel things, still matters despite all our technology. Which leads us to consider Halloween's evolution in modern times, how it's been commercialized and transformed, but also how certain elements persist despite massive cultural changes. Halloween is now a multi-billion-dollar industry. Costumes, decorations, candy, horror movies, haunted attractions, themed events. It's been thoroughly commercialized, marketed, turned into an economic opportunity. And yet beneath the commercial surface, the old themes remain. We still mark this time as different, as special. We still use this night to engage with death and fear and the supernatural. We still gather together, children going door to door in groups, families decorating together, communities hosting events. We still tell stories, still perform rituals even if we call them traditions rather than magic. Still light candles and carved pumpkins, even if we've forgotten why that once felt necessary. The commercialization hasn't erased the deeper meaning. It's just added new layers, new expressions of the same fundamental impulses. When a suburban family spends a weekend decorating their house with skeletons and cobwebs and motion-activated zombies, they're doing something that would be recognizable to their ancestors, who carved protective faces into turnips and left offerings for the dead. The specifics have changed, but the impulse, to mark this time, to engage with these themes, to participate in collective ritual, remains. And children's experience of Halloween, which is often the most vivid and most treasured, carries forward something essential. For a child, Halloween is liminal in every sense. It happens at night, in darkness, in costume that transforms them into something else. They're allowed to go outside after dark, to approach strangers' houses, to receive gifts from people they don't know. All the normal rules are suspended, and they're engaging with scary things, haunted houses, spooky decorations, ghost stories, in a context that's exciting rather than traumatic, because everyone around them is signaling that this is play, this is fun, this is safe. That experience shapes them. It teaches that fear can be pleasurable, that darkness can be navigated, that scary things can be controlled and even enjoyed. It builds psychological resilience through graduated exposure to frightening stimuli in safe contexts. And it creates memories that last a lifetime. The smell of autumn leaves, the excitement of planning a costume, the weight of a pillowcase full of candy, the thrill of moving through darkness with friends, the sense of being part of something larger. A tradition that connects you to the past and to the community around you. These memories matter. They become part of identity, part of cultural literacy, part of the shared reference points that bind communities together. When adults look back on Halloween memories from childhood, they're often remembering some of their most vivid experiences of joy, fear, excitement, freedom. Halloween gave them permission to be someone else, to stay up late, to eat too much candy, to be scared in ways that felt thrilling rather than traumatic. And many of those adults now recreate Halloween for their own children, passing forward the tradition, maintaining the continuity, keeping alive these practices that connect us to ancestors who lit bonfires on hilltops and wore animal skins to confuse spirits. There's something beautiful in that continuity, in the way traditions persist by adapting, by finding new forms that serve the same deep needs. Halloween has changed enormously over the centuries, from Samhain to All Hallows' Eve to the commercial festival it is now. But it remains recognizably the same thing, a time to acknowledge death, to play with fear, to mark the transition into darkness, to remember the dead, to gather together for protection and celebration, to assert that we're not helpless in the face of mortality and darkness and the unknown, but can meet them with light, with community, with ritual, with the refusal to pretend they don't exist. And as you settle deeper now, your body growing heavy, your thoughts beginning to drift, consider what you carry forward from Halloween, from this tradition that's older than you know, that connects you to ancestors whose names you'll never learn, but whose lives shaped yours through the culture they built and passed down. Perhaps it's a childhood memory of perfect October weather, leaves crunching underfoot, the excitement of knocking on doors. Perhaps it's the feeling of wearing a costume, of being transformed, of trying on a different identity for one night. Perhaps it's the way darkness and candlelight create atmosphere, create mood, create a space where ordinary rules don't quite apply. Perhaps it's simply the acknowledgement that death exists, that we're all mortal, and that this truth deserves to be honored rather than hidden, faced rather than denied. Whatever you carry, know that it's part of something larger, something that extends back through time and across cultures, something that speaks to fundamental human needs and fears and hopes. Halloween survives because we need it, because we need times and spaces to acknowledge the darkness, to dance with mortality, to remember that life is precious precisely because it ends, that joy is sweeter when we know it's temporary, that community matters because we face these truths together rather than alone. Rest in that knowledge now. Let the darkness around you be not frightening, but comforting, a natural part of the cycle that Halloween honors. The light will return. The year will turn. Life will continue. But for now, in this moment, in this season of long nights and falling leaves and traditions that remember the dead, there's wisdom in accepting the darkness, in resting within it, in knowing that humans have faced these long nights for thousands of years and have always found ways to light fires, tell stories, protect each other, and wait for the spring that will eventually come. There's a phenomenon that happens in many haunted house attractions. something psychologists call fear contagion, where one person's screams and terror trigger genuine fear responses in everyone around them, even though everyone knows intellectually that nothing is actually dangerous. The fear becomes social, shared, amplified through the group until what started as entertainment edges towards something more visceral. Heart rates synchronize, adrenaline floods systems. People who came in laughing leave genuinely shaken, not because anything happened to them personally, but because they experienced the fear of those around them as if it were their own. And this reveals something profound about how fear works in humans. We're built to pick up emotional states from others, to feel what they feel. Because for our ancestors, if someone in your group was terrified, there was probably a good reason, and you needed to prepare to fight or flee immediately. No time to verify the threat yourself. Halloween exploits this, creates spaces where we can experience collective fear safely. The haunted house, the dark theater showing a horror film, the campfire circle where someone's telling ghost stories. These are all contexts where fear becomes communal, where individual responses amplify each other, where the experience is richer and more intense because you're sharing it. And there's something deeply human about this, about wanting to be scared together, about using fear as a bonding mechanism, as a way of creating shared experience and shared memory, which connects to why we tell scary stories at all, why narrative and fear have been linked throughout human history. Our ancestors sat around fires in the dark, the only safe spaces in a world full of predators and dangers, and they told stories. Some stories taught practical information about what was safe to eat, where water could be found, how to track animals. But many stories were warnings, cautionary tales about what happened when you broke taboos, when you wandered into forbidden places, when you ignored the wisdom of elders. These stories used fear as a teaching tool, making lessons memorable through emotional impact. Ghost stories are particularly effective for this because they violate our most fundamental assumptions about reality, that the dead stay dead, that the physical laws we understand are reliable, that the world operates according to rules we can predict. A ghost story says none of that is certain, says the boundary between life and death isn't absolute, says there are things operating by rules we don't understand. And that uncertainty, that sense that reality might not be what we think it is, that's fundamentally frightening in a way that physical dangers aren't. A bear or a snake is dangerous, but it's understandable. It operates by natural laws. You can learn to predict its behavior, avoid it, defend against it. But a ghost? A ghost doesn't follow any rules you can learn. It might appear anywhere. It might target you for reasons that make no sense. It might be unstoppable, immune to any defense you could mount. The ghost represents the unknown unknowable, the terror that comes from realizing there might be forces in the universe that operate completely outside our framework for understanding reality. And yet we seek out these stories, want to hear them, tell them to each other, particularly on Halloween when the cultural context says it's appropriate, even expected, to engage with these fears. There's something cathartic about controlled exposure to existential terror, about facing the possibility that reality isn't what we think, and then stepping back from that possibility, returning to normal life with the assurance that it was just a story, that the rules still hold, that we're safe. But are we safe? That's the question Halloween keeps asking, the uncertainty it maintains. Because while we know rationally that ghosts probably don't exist, that the supernatural is probably not real, we can't prove it absolutely. We've all had experiences that felt uncanny, moments that seem to suggest reality is stranger than we admit. The sense of being watched when no one's there. The feeling that you've been somewhere before when you know you haven't. The dream that seemed prophetic. The coincidence that was too perfect to be chance. These experiences don't prove anything supernatural, but they create enough uncertainty to keep the possibility alive, to keep us wondering. And this wondering, this space of uncertainty, is where Halloween lives. It's the celebration of the maybe, the what if, the you never know for sure. It acknowledges that our understanding of reality is incomplete, that there are vast territories of experience and existence we don't comprehend, that certainty is always provisional. And, in acknowledging this, Halloween becomes a kind of intellectual and emotional honesty, admitting that we don't have all the answers, that the universe is larger and stranger than our models of it, that mystery persists despite all our science and technology and accumulated knowledge. Consider how Halloween has retained its power in an age of scientific understanding that's eliminated so many old supernatural beliefs. We know now that the Earth orbits the sun, that diseases are caused by microorganisms, not demons, that thunder is an atmospheric phenomenon, not the anger of gods, that death is the cessation of biological processes, not the departure of a soul to another realm. Science has explained so much, has pushed back the darkness of ignorance, has given us power over nature that our ancestors could barely imagine. And yet Halloween persists, and not just as nostalgic tradition, but as something that still feels meaningful, still resonates, still draws us in. Why? Because science answers how, but not why. It explains mechanisms, but not meanings. It tells us what happens when we die. Biological decomposition, the end of consciousness, the recycling of matter. But it doesn't tell us how to feel about that, how to make peace with mortality, how to maintain connection with those we've lost. And Halloween, with its ancient roots in honoring the dead, in acknowledging death as part of life rather than life's opposite, provides what science can't. A framework for engaging emotionally and spiritually with mortality. A way of keeping the dead present through memory and ritual, even while knowing they're gone forever. The Day of the Dead demonstrates this beautifully. Mexican families build their ofrendas, knowing that their deceased relatives aren't literally returning to eat the offerings of food and drink, but doing it anyway because the ritual itself has value, creates meaning, maintains connection. The photographs on the altar keep the deceased visually present. The marigolds create a sensory connection through scent. The favorite foods remember the person's individuality, their preferences, the specific life they lived. And staying up all night in the cemetery, cleaning graves, decorating them, being present with the dead. This is tending to relationship, acknowledging that death changes the relationship, but doesn't end it. That we remain connected to those who've gone through memory and love, and the rituals that express both. This is sophisticated emotional and spiritual work disguised as folk tradition. It's a way of processing grief that acknowledges the finality of death while refusing to let death be the final word. That says, yes, they're gone, but they remain in us, in our memories, in the ways they shaped us, in the love that persists beyond the physical presence. And doing this collectively, as a community gathered in cemeteries or building altars together, sharing stories about the deceased, laughing and crying and celebrating. This prevents the isolation that grief can bring, the sense of being alone in loss. Halloween and its related traditions create spaces for communal mourning and communal remembering, for acknowledging that we all face mortality, all lose people we love, and we face this universal human experience together. There's a gentleness in that, a compassion built into the tradition. And it's striking how Halloween manages to hold both the playful and the profound, the silly and the serious. Children in costume collecting candy coexist with people genuinely grieving at gravesites. Plastic skeletons as lawn decorations coexist with serious contemplation of mortality. Horror movies watched for entertainment coexist with authentic fear of death and loss. The tradition is large enough, flexible enough, to accommodate all of it. The commercial and the sacred, the frivolous and the meaningful, the ancient and the modern. And perhaps that's why it's survived so long and spread so far. It doesn't demand that you engage in one particular way. You can participate at whatever level feels right. Dressing up, decorating, watching scary movies, telling ghost stories, visiting graves, building altars, attending Samhain rituals, handing out candy to children, or simply acknowledging that yes, this time of year feels different. The darkness is coming, and that's worth marking somehow. The tradition accepts all of it, judges none of it, makes space for everyone. Which brings us to think about Halloween's future, how it will continue to evolve, what elements will persist, and what will change. Every tradition either adapts or dies, and Halloween has shown remarkable adaptability, absorbing new influences, finding new forms, staying relevant across centuries of cultural transformation. From Samhain to All Hallows' Eve to the modern commercial holiday, it's remained recognizably itself while changing almost everything about its surface expression. What will Halloween look like 100 years from now? We can't know, but we can guess that certain core elements will remain. The acknowledgement of death and darkness, the play with fear, the crossing of boundaries, the time set aside to engage with what we usually avoid. The costumes will change, the decorations will evolve, new traditions will emerge, and old ones will fade. But the underlying impulse, to mark this transition, to honor the dead, to face the frightening, that will likely persist because it addresses permanent features of the human condition. We will always be mortal. We will always fear death and darkness and the unknown. We will always need ways to process these fears, to honor those we've lost, to acknowledge the mystery at the heart of existence. And as long as those needs persist, something like Halloween will exist, providing space for those needs to be met through ritual, through play, through communal participation in traditions that connect us to the past and to each other. And as you rest here now, your breathing slow and regular, your body heavy with approaching sleep, you're participating in another kind of transition. From waking consciousness to the dream state, from the known world of daylight awareness to the mysterious realm of sleep, where different rules apply, where the impossible becomes possible, where you might fly or breathe underwater or speak with the dead. Sleep is its own liminal space, its own threshold. And perhaps that's why we're so receptive to thoughts about Halloween at this boundary moment. Because we're about to cross over ourselves, to enter the darkness, to surrender control, and trust that we'll wake safely on the other side. Halloween honors all thresholds, all crossings, all moments of transition and transformation. The change of seasons, the movement from life to death, the boundary between human and animal that the costume crosses, the division between past and present that memory bridges, the line between real and unreal that stories blur, and the shift from waking to sleeping that you're experiencing right now. This gentle descent into unconsciousness that happens every night, but that never stops being a small mystery, a small surrender, a small act of faith that you'll return. So let yourself cross over. Let the day go.
Let consciousness soften and blur. Let the boundaries dissolve. Halloween teaches us that thresholds are not just places of danger, but also places of possibility. That crossing over can lead to transformation. That the other side, whether it's winter after autumn, morning after night, or whatever comes after life, is part of the cycle, necessary and natural. The Celts were wise to honor these transitions, to mark them with fire and story and ritual, to acknowledge that change is constant, and thresholds are where change happens. You're at a threshold now. Cross it gently, knowing that humans have been crossing this threshold every night for hundreds of thousands of years. That your ancestors crossed it in caves and huts and castles and every kind of shelter humans have built against the darkness. You're safe. You're protected by walls and doors and locks, yes, but also by the accumulated wisdom of countless generations who learned to trust sleep, who understood that rest is necessary, that darkness is not enemy but part of the natural rhythm, that letting go is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. Halloween spirits, if they walk tonight, walk in a world you're leaving as you enter sleep. And perhaps in your dreams you'll encounter them, those ancestors and ghosts and mysterious beings that populate the folklore. Perhaps you'll find yourself at a crossroads, at a doorway, at some threshold where the rules shift and anything becomes possible. Or perhaps you'll simply rest, deeply and well, and wake tomorrow to a world that's exactly as it was, ordinary and explicable, and safely contained within the boundaries of natural law. Either way is fine. Halloween makes space for both, the mysterious and the mundane, the supernatural and the natural, the belief and the skepticism. It's a big tent, this tradition, large enough to hold contradictions, to welcome everyone regardless of what they believe or don't believe, asking only that they pause for a moment to acknowledge that yes, this time matters. This transition from light to darkness matters. And we mark it together. We honor it together. We cross this threshold together. Rest now. The spirits, if they're out there, are going about their business. The jack-o'-lantern on the porch is doing its job, standing guard, keeping watch. The boundary between worlds is as thin as it will get this year, and that's fine. That's appropriate. That's how it should be. Tomorrow, the veil will thicken again. The ordinary rules will reassert themselves. Life will continue. But tonight, in this liminal darkness, anything seems possible, and that's a gift. The gift of wonder, of mystery, of not knowing for certain what lies beyond the firelight. Sweet dreams. May they be strange and vivid, scary perhaps, but not traumatic, filled with the symbols and images that Halloween has gifted us, the pumpkins and ghosts, the witches and bats, the skeletons dancing in moonlight, the ancient knowledge that death is real, but love persists, that darkness falls, but sunrise always comes, that we're all walking together through this mystery, all crossing thresholds, all moving toward an unknown that becomes less frightening when we face it together. There's a tradition in some parts of Ireland and Scotland that's been largely forgotten now, something called dumb supper, where families would prepare a meal in complete silence on Halloween night, setting an extra place at the table for deceased relatives who might return for the evening. No one was allowed to speak during the preparation or the meal itself. The silence was essential, creating a space where the living and the dead could share a table without the barrier of words, without the usual distinctions that separate the worlds. People would leave the door slightly ajar so spirits could enter easily. They'd watch the empty chair,
and some claim to see shadows settling into it, to feel a presence at the table, to sense that their departed loved ones had indeed returned for this annual meal. This silent communion across the boundary of death.
The silence itself was meaningful. Words are for the living, for communication between conscious beings operating in linear time. But the dead, if they exist in any form, might experience time differently, might not need language, might communicate through presence alone, through the simple fact of being there, of occupying space at the table where they'd sat in life. And the living family members, sitting in silence with their memories and their grief and their love, weren't trying to speak to the dead so much as simply be with them, acknowledge them, include them in the family circle one more time. This practice has mostly disappeared, replaced by other forms of remembrance, but it captures something profound about what Halloween has always been at its deepest level. Not entertainment or commerce or even superstition, but an attempt to maintain relationship with those we've lost, to refuse the absolute severance that death appears to create, to insist that love persists even when the beloved is gone. And whether you believe the dead literally return, or whether you understand the practice as purely symbolic, psychological, the effect is similar. Creating space for the deceased in your awareness, tending to the ongoing relationship that death changed, but didn't end. Every culture has found ways to do this, to keep the dead present. Some cultures speak to them daily, maintain shrines in homes, include them in family decisions. Others set aside specific times, annual festivals, death anniversaries, particular holy days, when the focus turns to those who've passed. Halloween, in all its cultural variations, is one of these times. And perhaps its importance has grown because in modern Western culture, we've lost so many of the daily practices that kept death present, that integrated mortality into regular life, rather than hiding it away. We don't typically prepare bodies for burial ourselves anymore. We don't usually die at home surrounded by family. We don't wear mourning clothes for extended periods, don't observe long mourning rituals, don't have culturally mandated times and ways to express grief. Death has been professionalized, medicalized, removed from daily life and placed in hospitals and funeral homes and cemeteries, away from residential areas. We've hidden death, and in hiding it, we've made it more frightening, more alien, harder to integrate into our understanding of normal life. Halloween pushes back against this hiding. For one night, death is everywhere. Skeleton decorations, tombstones on lawns, ghosts hanging from trees, skulls on t-shirts. We make death visible, present, even playful. And in doing this, we're reclaiming something that was lost, reasserting that death is part of life, that it belongs in our awareness, that we need not and should not pretend it doesn't exist. The imagery is often cartoonish, commercialized, stripped of real pain. And there's valid criticism of that, of how Halloween sometimes trivializes death. But even in trivialized form, the images serve a function. They keep death present, make it something we can look at and name and even laugh about, rather than something we must always avoid thinking about until it forces itself on us through actual loss. And when actual loss comes, when someone you love dies and grief is fresh and overwhelming, Halloween can become something different. An opportunity to honor that person publicly, to speak their name, to include them in a cultural moment that acknowledges the ongoing presence of the dead in the lives of the living. You can carve a pumpkin in their memory. You can place their photograph on an altar. You can tell stories about them to children asking about the meaning of the holiday. You can visit their grave with marigolds and candles. You can perform whatever ritual feels right, knowing that millions of other people are doing similar things, that you're part of a vast collective acknowledgement of mortality and loss,
and the love that outlasts death. This is Halloween's gift to the grieving. Permission to be public with grief, to mark it, to express it through ritual and symbol during a time when such expression is culturally sanctioned, rather than awkward or uncomfortable. Most of the year, grief is expected to be private, brief, contained. But on Halloween and the Day of the Dead, grief is welcome, honored, given space and time and form. The tradition says yes, they're gone, and yes, you miss them, and yes, it's appropriate to honor that missing. To do something concrete that acknowledges the hole they left in your life. And this connects to a larger question about what rituals do for us. Why humans have always created rituals around significant events and transitions. Rituals provide structure for experiences that are otherwise overwhelming, formless, impossible to process. Death is too big, too final, too frightening to face without some framework for engaging with it. Rituals, funeral rites, mourning practices, memorial traditions give us specific things to do, specific ways to express what we're feeling, specific forms that can contain and channel the chaos of grief into something manageable. Halloween functions as a collective ritual, one that happens annually, that everyone can participate in regardless of their specific losses, that says death is real for all of us, will come for all of us, and we face this universal human fact together. And in facing it together, in communities decorating their streets, children going door to door, families gathering, people sharing stories and traditions, we reduce the isolation that death and grief can bring. You're not alone in being mortal. You're not alone in having lost people you love. You're not alone in feeling afraid sometimes of the darkness, the unknown, the inevitable end. Everyone experiences these things, and this tradition creates space to acknowledge them communally rather than carry them alone. There's deep wisdom in this, in the way traditions evolve to meet psychological and spiritual needs that persist across cultures and centuries. Halloween isn't arbitrary. It exists because we need it. Because late autumn's darkness and the approach of winter trigger something in us that requires acknowledgement and ritual. The tradition has adapted to modern contexts. Electric lights instead of bonfires, store-bought costumes instead of animal skins, suburban trick-or-treating instead of leaving food for wandering spirits. But the core remains. This is when we pause, collectively, to acknowledge what we usually avoid, to make space for death and darkness and fear, to honor the dead in the dying season and the thinning boundary between worlds. And as you lie here now, so close to sleep that waking consciousness is becoming memory, consider what Halloween has given you over your life. The childhood joy of transformation, of becoming someone else for a night. The thrill of controlled fear, of testing your courage in haunted houses or through scary stories. The sense of community created by shared tradition, by everyone participating in something larger than themselves. The permission to be strange, to be dark, to be fascinated by morbid things for one night without judgment. The connection to history, to ancestors who lit fires and wore masks and told stories about the dead returning. The opportunity to honor those you've lost, to include them in your awareness, to maintain relationship across the boundary of death. All of this is gift. All of it is value. All of it speaks to needs so deep they're nearly invisible until traditions like Halloween make space for them to emerge and be met. We need times of transformation, when normal rules are suspended and we can try on different identities. We need to face our fears in controlled ways that build resilience rather than traumatize. We need communal rituals that create shared experience and shared meaning. We need permission to acknowledge death and darkness rather than always maintaining the fiction of immortality and endless light. We need ways to honor the dead that feel meaningful rather than empty. Halloween provides all of this, has been providing it for thousands of years in various forms, and will likely continue providing it as long as humans remain mortal and aware of their mortality. There's something beautiful in that continuity, in knowing that what you felt as a child on Halloween night, the excitement and fear and wonder, is fundamentally what children felt 1,000 years ago, what they'll likely feel 1,000 years from now. The costumes change, the technology changes, the specific fears and monsters change, but the underlying experience remains constant. The liminal time, the threshold moment, the crossing from light to darkness, from summer to winter, from life to death, from waking to sleeping. These transitions are permanent features of existence, and humans will always need ways to mark them, honor them, pass through them with awareness and intention rather than avoidance and fear. And you're passing through such a transition now, crossing from the waking world into sleep, letting go of consciousness and control, trusting that you'll be safe in the darkness, that rest will restore you, that morning will come and you'll wake to continue your life. This trust is profound, is foundational to being human, is something we practice every night without really thinking about it. But Halloween invites us to think about it, to notice these small deaths and rebirths we experience daily, to see them as related to the larger death and hoped-for rebirth that religious traditions around the world have imagined, and that secular people face with uncertainty, but also with trust that whatever comes next, if anything comes next, is part of the natural order, is not to be feared but accepted. The Celts believed that Samhain was a time when veils thinned, when crossing between worlds became possible. Maybe they were right. Not literally perhaps, but metaphorically, psychologically. Maybe at certain times, seasonal transitions, threshold moments, the edge between waking and sleeping, we are more permeable, more open to what's usually closed off, more able to sense or imagine or create connection with realities beyond our normal awareness. Maybe the dead don't literally return on Halloween, but maybe we become more able to feel their presence, to access memories more vividly, to experience the ongoing relationship we have with them through memory and love. And maybe, as you cross into sleep, you'll dream of those you've lost. We'll see them again in that strange country where the impossible becomes possible, where time doesn't work the way it works in waking life, where you might be any age and so might they, where you can speak or simply be together, where the grief of separation dissolves into the joy of reunion, even though you know, somewhere in the dream, that this isn't real, isn't permanent, that morning will bring return to a world where they remain absent. Even so, the dream has value, the connection has meaning. The boundary crossed for a moment creates relief from the pain of absolute separation. Or maybe you'll dream of something else entirely. Flying, adventures, strange landscapes, the random firings of neurons that create the bizarre narratives of dreams. That's fine too. Halloween makes space for all of it. For the serious and the silly. For the sacred and the profane. For genuine grief and playful fear. For ancient wisdom and modern entertainment. It's not prescriptive. Doesn't tell you how you must engage. Accepts whatever participation you offer or don't offer. And this acceptance, this flexibility,
might be why the tradition has survived so long. It doesn't demand belief in any particular doctrine, doesn't require adherence to specific rules, doesn't exclude anyone based on what they do or don't believe about death and the afterlife and the supernatural. Come as you are. Participate as you wish. Take what serves you and leave what doesn't. The tradition is large enough, old enough, rich enough to accommodate everyone, to offer something to anyone who pauses long enough to engage with it. If this journey through Halloween's history and meaning has resonated with you, if you found value in exploring these traditions that connect us to ancestors and to each other, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. There are more explorations ahead, more quiet investigations of the things that shape us, the traditions that carry wisdom, the practices that help us make meaning in a universe that offers no inherent meaning except what we create. Sleep now. Let go of the day, of its worries and tasks and unfinished business. Let go of your identity, your responsibilities, your usual way of being in the world. Become, for these hours of darkness, something simpler. Just a breathing body at rest. Just consciousness dimming like a candle burning down. Just one more human being crossing the threshold into sleep. Just as your ancestors did. Just as your descendants will. Participating in the oldest rhythm. The constant pulse of waking and sleeping. Light and darkness. Life and death. And whatever lies beyond. The jack-o'-lanterns are burning out. The trick-or-treaters have gone home. The ghosts, if they were abroad, are fading back into whatever realm they inhabit when it's not Halloween. The door between worlds is closing again, the boundary thickening, the ordinary rules reasserting themselves. But you were here for it. You marked the moment. You participated in the tradition. And that participation connects you to something vast, to all the humans who've ever lived through autumn's darkness, who felt the chill as summer dies, who've honored the dead and faced their fears and lit fires against the night. You carry that forward now into sleep, into dreams, into the private darkness where each of us goes alone but where we're also, somehow, together, all sleeping, all crossing over, all trusting that morning will come and the world will still be there, and we'll wake to continue the journey for another day. Rest deeply, rest well, and may you wake tomorrow to a world that seems a little less frightening because you've faced the fear, a little less lonely because you've honored those who've gone before, a little more meaningful because you've participated in traditions that create meaning from the raw material of mortality and time. Sweet dreams. May the spirits be gentle with you. May the darkness be restful rather than frightening. May you sleep soundly through this Halloween night and wake to the ordinary world renewed, carrying with you the memory that for one night, anything seemed possible. The boundaries were thin, and death was not the enemy, but simply part of the cycle, acknowledged and honored, and faced with courage and community in the light of jack-o'-lanterns burning steadily in the dark. Good night. Sleep well. And blessed Samhain to all who celebrate, in whatever form, this ancient turning, this threshold moment, this night when we remember that we're all walking together through the mystery, all crossing boundaries, all mortal, all connected by the traditions that help us face what we must face and find meaning in the facing. Rest now. The spirits are quiet. The night is long, and sleep, that small death, that nightly practice for the final crossing, is waiting patiently to receive you into its darkness, its rest, its restoration. Go gently, go peacefully, and know that whatever comes in dreams or in death,
you're not alone, have never been alone, are part of something larger that holds you, even when everything else lets go. Sleep, dream, rest, and wake when morning comes to the ordinary miracle of another day, another chance, another revolution of the wheel that turns us all from darkness into light and back again, endlessly, patiently, carrying us through time toward whatever ending awaits, whatever transformation, whatever comes next in this great mystery that Halloween honors and acknowledges and faces with fire and story, and the stubborn insistence that love matters, memory matters, connection matters, even across the boundary that seems absolute but that traditions like Halloween remind us might be more permeable than we know, more crossable, more like a doorway than a wall, more like an invitation than a barrier. Rest now. You've crossed over. You're safe on the other side. And tomorrow, you'll cross back. And the world will continue. And Halloween will fade into memory until next year, when the darkness comes again, and the veil thins again, and we gather again to honor the dead, face our fears, and light our lanterns against the beautiful, terrible, necessary darkness that gives meaning to every moment of light.